Radio home for Buckeyes football. 1410 WING. Dayton's ESPN Radio. The Reds tried to make a splash in free agency. They sent the player a Venmo request instead. Only Cincinnati could negotiate backwards. The Justin Kinner Show. 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show, right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
I've said it many, many times. I would have rather the Cincinnati Reds just said, you know what, we're not even going to attempt to go get Kyle Shwarber. The result would have been the same, and at least you wouldn't have led your fans on making fools of us, thinking that this cheap-ass organization was actually going to be anything other than, well, that. Cheap and, well, the other word I used. I'm Justin Kinner. We welcome you in. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. No surprise, or maybe for some, the Reds didn't get Kyle Shwarber. Shocker. And I was so back and forth on this. One day I was like, oh, there's no chance. The next day, I started to believe that there was. ESPN's Jeff Passan put this out earlier today. It broke a few hours ago that Kyle Shwarber and the Phillies finalized a 5-year, $150 million contract. All right, so it reunited the National League home run leader and the franchise with whom he blossomed into that MVP candidate with, of course, and we all thought for sure that the Reds had about as good of a chance as anybody. But listen, had it come out that the Reds, or had it come out that the Phillies had signed Kyle Shwarber to like a 4 or 5 year, $175, $200 million deal at like 40 to 45 million a year, I would get it. But guys, the Phillies got him at a bargain. And it's sad that a bargain for the Phillies is just insurmountable for the Cincinnati Reds. Guys, $30 million a year. 30 mil. 35, I think, would have been pushing it. And it's absolutely pathetically, embarrassingly sad that 30 mil is just too much for the old Castellinis and all the other owners to reach into their rich pockets and fork over a player to reward not just the players and a manager and Terry Francona, but a fan base that has been clamoring for something like this for so long. It really does suck. And then I'm going to be told, hey, Kinner, when you do your show at Reds Fest next month, make sure not to be a jerk and call out Castellini and company. But someone like, don't you feel like somebody has to? Like, why do we as fans and media keep letting that organization get away with it? Today's a bad day for Reds, in the Reds history, by the way. I just want you guys to know that. This isn't just any free agent. This is a free agent that basically started putting out feelers at last year's All-Star break. This is a free agent that was basically saying it would be an honor to play for the team that he grew up cheering for. Didn't just do it then. He was in Middletown a few weeks ago. He did a lot of media hits talking about how much it would mean to have his family, him and his family, they're going to be, living in the area. They're going to be spending a lot of time here. Wouldn't it make sense that, hey, you just commute a half hour down the road instead of, well, commuting states over? I mean, a state over. It doesn't make any sense. And to have a guy that hit 56 home runs last year, Dusty Baker did an interview earlier today and said, man, can you imagine him in Cincinnati? He'd hit 70 home runs. I think that he would. 56 home runs scattered across not so, hitter-friendly ballparks. Imagine what would happen if, assuming he's healthy, if 80 of the 160-plus games that he plays in would be at Great American Ballpark. Imagine him in a lineup ahead of Elly De La Cruz. And what that would do for that young star's career, what that would do for this lineup. This is a guy that had over 100 RBIs last year. He had over 56 home runs last year. Imagine putting that guy's production in this lineup, what that would have meant. Not just from a production standpoint, but just from the standpoint of what it would do as far as the excitement level. Reds Fest coming up on January 16th and 17th, opening day, a few months away. Guys, he hit over 100 plus RBIs last year. Elly De La Cruz, and by the way, he had 56 home runs and 100 plus RBIs last year. Elly De La Cruz was the Reds' leader in RBIs and home runs this year. You want to know with what? Elly De La Cruz hit 86 RBIs last season. and he led the team in that category. Elly De La Cruz is not a home run hitter, but he led the Cincinnati Reds in that category as well. He hit 22 home runs. Can you imagine 56 home runs in that lineup? Can you imagine the 56 home runs that Schwarber would have brought? Can you imagine 132? He had over 50 plus RBI. He had 50 more RBIs than the Reds' leading RBI guy. He almost tripled the amount of home runs that the Reds' leading home run hitter had last year. And yet we're sitting here saying, man, Elly De La Cruz is a generational talent. But yet you could have potentially signed a guy for a short window of time that had 50 more RBIs than our generational talent and had almost triple the amount of home runs as our generational talent. You could have had two real generational talents in this lineup. Shame on me. Shame on me for falling for it. Shame on me. I apologize. That's on me. I screwed up. Although there were segments of the show that I can go back and say, no, I knew this was going to happen. No, I started to fall for it. I started to believe it. Because I felt like the Reds would not have put themselves in a position to look ridiculous, but they've been doing that since the Castellinis took over decades and decades ago. Like like I should have known. What I thought was, well, they wouldn't get this far out into the deep end of the water if they didn't feel like they could swim in those waters. You know what I mean? Like when if you know you can't swim and you're out in the ocean, you don't want to keep going out further and further and further knowing you can't swim. You want to stay somewhere close that if something happens, you can quickly dive back to where, you're have footing. The Reds kept going out in the deep end, but the whole time they went out in the deep end and knew they couldn't swim. Guys, $30 million a year. In 2012, they gave a 10-year contract to Joey Votto at $225. They paid him $25 million a year. And $25 million a year was for a guy back in 2012. It's 2025, 26 right now, and you can't fork over $30 million a year for not a 10, 12-year contract, but for 4 or 5. He wanted to be a Red. He said it as many he said so. He mentioned how much it would mean to play. The Reds will never have this opportunity again to have a Hall of Fame manager, an up-and-coming generational talent in Elly De La Cruz, a homegrown top 5 rotation in baseball, and a need that a hometown guy could provide. And you just let it go. And they didn't get outbid. Getting outbid is we were willing to go that 25 to 30 range, and the Phillies just went 35 to 40. You know what? I would be okay with that. I'd be like, yeah, Reds, I understand. I'd be frustrated. But I think it's more embarrassing that you lost Kyle Shwarber over $30 freaking million. I don't want no stupid bobblehead night. I don't want no pick six plan or, get your bobbleheads early. I'm going to knock all these bobbleheads behind me off with a bat. I can't stand bobbleheads anymore. I don't care about the newest. We're going to put 5 different kinds of ice cream on 5 different kinds of Dorito, and we're going to put Frank's Red Hot and chocolate sauce and, maybe a jalapeno on top, and we're going to call it, Red's Hot, a Red's Hot bundle of the day. I don't care about any of the stupid deals. Man. They won. They did it. They got me to buy in. I believe they were going to do it. Shame on me. What the hell was I thinking? I wasn't asking for this team to go be a top 5 spender in baseball. $30 million a year for a guy that hit 56 home runs last year, that hit 130 RBIs, and did that in a non-hitter friendly ballpark. Imagine what those numbers would look like if you were in Cincinnati. Eddie on YouTube. What up, Eddie? Eddie says it's like they vowed to not spend big money on a guy again after the Votto deal. Yeah, it almost feels like that. I agree with you. It's like they said, hey, we will never make that mistake again. Eddie goes on to say, shake my head. If they talking about expanded payroll for a few years, this core plus a top hitter and starting pitcher would be huge. Yeah, like imagine if they invested into this core and just said, hey, we're not going to be big spenders all the time, but we're going to make an exception for this run right here because there will be a return on investment. Guys, last year, the Reds had a major increase in attendance and a major increase in the ratings for FanDuel TV, which was previously was Bally Sports. There was a major increase in ratings and attendance. And that's just because you went out and got a 70-plus-year-old manager that made us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Imagine what the attendance and the ratings would be for a team that went out and got the best free agent at $30 million a year. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about us as a Reds affiliate. They don't care about anybody but themselves because they're not fans. And you could say, well, that's a good thing. You should be, it's about business. No, not when you own a professional sports team. What did the Dodgers do? The Dodgers just signed a guy today. They went out and they hit the free agent market. Shocker. A team that, won back-to-back World Series. The Dodgers aren't taking their foot off the gas. They just want to keep going. The Dodgers went out today and signed Edwin Diaz. They went out and signed Edwin Diaz. And not just signed Edwin Diaz, they went out and got a guy. They spent more money on a bullpen arm than the Reds have ever spent on any free agent ever. That is insane to me. That is absolutely ridiculous. The Dodgers, multi-year agreement, a 3-year agreement, $69 million with Edwin Diaz earlier today. The Dodgers last year, we act like that team was bulletproof. That team can score a lot of runs. That team had very good starting pitching. Their bullpen was one of the worst in baseball. And they said, you know what? We just won the World Series. We don't need to go spend anymore. We have enough. We can overcome that. No, they said, man, not only do we have the best lineup in baseball, but we need to have the best, in one of the best rotations in baseball. We have to have the best bullpen in baseball too. And it's not just because they have more money. It's because they have a competitive drive. Just because you have money doesn't mean you spend it. You have to have a competitive drive. The Reds don't have a competitive bone in their damn body. Whatever, man. I don't think there's a move they can make this free agency to make this up to fans. It's disappointing. I got my hopes up, and I'm ticked off right now because I'm a huge Reds fan, and I just really wanted to experience something special. And there's nothing special about what the Reds just let happen today. Just let it, 30 mil. Like I said, and if you're just joining us, Justin Kinner, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. The Reds did not get Kyle Shwarber. For days now, we've been told that, man, the Reds are in on Kyle Shwarber. ESPN's Jeff Passan. You look at some of the, Rosenthal, you look at some of the biggest, Major League Baseball insiders. They had the Reds deep in conversations. And I could see if the Reds would have been outbid by 10+ mil. But man, oh man, the Pirates, it was reported that the Pirates of all teams, who I think are cheaper than the Reds, by the way, I think that they are a worse franchise than the Reds. The Pirates offered a 4-year, $100 million contract. That would have been $25 a year. So I get why that's not enough. But the Reds would probably offer something similar right there. But you can't do $5 more a year. That's major production, guys. 56 home runs and 130 RBIs last year. L.A. De La Cruz led the team in home runs last year with 22. That's almost triple the amount of home runs that Ellie hit. That would almost be, that's 80 home runs combined just between those two. That's almost 90, 100 home runs almost combined just between those two. So 80 home runs combined between those two. You look at the 86 RBIs last year from Ellie, plus the 130. Just those two alone in that lineup would have produced over 200 runs, 80 home runs, and that's just two of your guys in that lineup. With that rotation, they got Emilio Pagan with that bullpen, Hall of Fame manager. Shame on me, and shame on you. Shame on all of us. And for those of you who never believed that they were going to do it, good for you. You're a better person than I am because I was stupid enough to fall for it. I can't stand the Reds. The Reds have pissed me off, and it's December. 'Tis the season, I guess. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll be right back.
out like the NBA rests its players. The Justin Kinner Show, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. So we opened up the show with reaction. I mean, I hate it. I hate that, like, sports is like this. And there's no fix to it, by the way. And this is my point. Like, for people out there that are demanding a salary cap in baseball, and I guess I could do a better job resetting. My apologies. Welcome back, Justin Kinner Show. Full reaction to Kyle Shwarber signing a 5-year deal, not with our Cincinnati Reds, but a 5-year, $150 million deal as he returns to the Phillies. And the number that bothers me is the fact that it was $30 million a year. If the Reds had been in conversations, because in my head, honestly, I'm like, oh, the Reds are like, for me, I'm a nobody. I've never worked in a Major League Baseball front office. Either of you. But we all kind of knew, because we all have common sense, that the Reds, if they were going to sign Schwarber, it was going to have to be, in my head, I was like, if people want to talk about hometown discounts, 25 is a hell of a hometown discount. But I thought at the very least 30. I thought 30 was the least. So I was like, they need to. So when I kept hearing how engaged they were with conversations with him, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, well, they have to be willing to, like, you know what I mean? Like, if I go shopping for a car or a house, I'm going to have a budget based on what little money I make in radio, okay? It would be a waste of my realtor's time. Shout out Brad Mays, Home Experts Realty, by the way. Shout out to Brad, But actually, I don't think it's Home Experts. It doesn't matter anymore. Shout out to Brad Mays. But besides the point, if I would waste my realtor's time if I said, go show me all these $1 million homes over here. And he's showing me all these $1 million homes, but I can't afford those $1 million homes. I would be wasting my time and his time. I wouldn't do that because I have common sense. I'm not going to go waste time looking at homes that I can't afford. So, but if there's this really expensive home that I like, it's like, clearly, if I'm looking at this home, clearly I know in my head I have enough to make this work. And that's what I thought with the Reds, that they wouldn't be shopping for these really expensive homes over here that they can't afford unless they are willing to maybe spend more than what they normally would for this particular home. So that's why I'm mad today, is because the Reds are either stupid as hell because they didn't know. I'm a nobody. I've never worked in a Major League Baseball front office. Even I know you're not going to go get Kyle Shwarber for 25. So why continue on engaging in a conversation for a house that you're not going to get approved for? Right? Like, that's kind of where I'm at with that. So the Reds, this is a major loss, guys, because it's not just that they didn't go get a big free agent, it's that they led us along. They made us buy in and believe, and that's the problem I have. I said this at the beginning. When the offseason started, Nick Krall came out and said, we are going to keep our spending to the same as it was last year. And I said, I hate that, but that is basically him thumping all of us Reds fans saying, hey, don't get too excited. We're not spending more than we did last year, so don't be talking about Kyle Shwarber. I was like, I don't like it, but I get it. I understand it, and don't lead fans along. And what they ended up doing is they led fans along. They engaged in conversations that they knew they had no business being in. Because, my gosh, guys, like, 30 mil? You can't afford 30 mil a year? I mean, that's the first. Well, we were offering him 27, so offer him $3 million more a year. Like, you're going to lose 56 home runs and 130 RBIs over a $3 to $5 million difference? Same thing with the Pirates. The Pirates offered 4 years, $25 million. They offered a 4-year, $100 million contract to Kyle Shwarber, right? The Phillies got him for 30. You have Paul Skeens, a generational pitcher. The Reds have a handful of really, really good pitchers. They have Ellie De La Cruz. They have really good talent. So if you were willing to do 25 a year, you mean to tell me you lost that guy over $5 million? You have Paul Skeens if you're the Pirates. You couldn't fork over $5 more a year. Shame on them. Shame on the Reds. Shame on baseball. Shame on shame on me for buying in. It really is ridiculous. As far as that goes. And I get it. What everyone's going to turn to is, well, the Reds, this is why baseball needs a salary cap. I completely disagree. The Reds don't need a salary cap. Because let's say they're going to spend about 115 mil if they spend about what they did last year. That's going to put them about that 115 mil range, right? Guys, if they put a salary cap, like let me put it this way. If Major League Baseball initiated a salary cap, the Reds still would not have signed Kyle Shwarber today. Because a salary cap is just, well, you can't spend more than this. The Reds, let's say that the salary cap is 250 mil. The Reds would look at that and say, okay, we're not even going to spend 150 mil. Putting a salary cap is not going to force teams to spend. If the salary cap is 250 mil, that's going to impact the Dodgers. The Dodgers are going to be like, damn, we can't spend more than 250 mil. We're spending $1 billion a year right now. The Reds are spending 115 mil, and that's a little below league average. And they wouldn't come close to that. And let's just say salary cap is 200, 175, 150, and it would never be that low. But that's how far down the Reds, Pirates, Guardians, and other teams are spending. A salary cap would not fix baseball, guys. Like, would it keep the Dodgers from got to catch them all like they're Pokemon or something? Would it keep them from hogging all the good players? Yes. Those players would slightly be distributed more throughout baseball, but it wouldn't, like, you know what I mean? It really wouldn't change us as fans and our experience with the Reds. Because if the salary cap is 250, the Reds still would only want to spend 115 mil. What baseball needs is a floor. If the Reds were forced to spend 150 a year, that's how you improve baseball. I don't want a salary cap. And hell with it. In a perfect world, there's a salary cap and a salary floor. You can't spend more than 250 mil a year on a roster, but by golly, you better at least be spending 125 to 150. The Reds don't need a salary cap. They need to be forced to spend like they give a damn. They have a bunch of good players because they sucked for so long that they drafted high and got a lot. It's kind of like the Bengals. The Bengals aren't a good organization because they got Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. It's just that they sucked butt for so long that they finally were able to get really good play. It was easy to draft Joe Burrow, easy to draft T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It was easy to draft those guys. Now that they started winning games and they're picking 17th in that range, they don't have anyone with the brain in that front office that knows what the hell they're doing, and that's why the Bengals are a disgrace and a joke. The Reds need to be told that they have to spend this amount of money, this amount of dollars. Because you're either going to be forced to, we drafted really good guys, we're going to extend these guys, or we have to spend money. We would be stupid not to get Kyle Shwarber because we have to spend this money somewhere. We have to get Kyle Shwarber. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. I'm very disappointed in the Cincinnati Reds. I thought this was an opportunity to say thank you to Reds fans for putting up with our cheap spending for so long. Because at the end of the day, as mad as I am, I'm not asking for much. I'm not asking the Reds to be the Dodgers. And I don't think you guys are either, right? I don't think we as Reds fans are asking them to be the Dodgers. We're just asking them not to be butt. We're just asking them not to be the Pirates. We're asking them, can you spend a little? We don't expect you. Let's say Matt McClain gets back on the right trajectory, right? I don't expect them to give mass extensions to Matt McClain, L.A. De La Cruz. You know, I don't expect them to keep Hunter Green on a second contract. I don't expect them to pay every player in this rotation. I expect you to invest into some of these guys, though. And Hunter Green doesn't count. Good for the Reds for getting a deal done early. But you're still spending at max $15 million a year for a top 5 pitcher in baseball that should be costing you anywhere between $25 to $30 million a year, a number that you've already proven. Like, this is proof already that you know they're not going to keep L.A. De La Cruz. All I'm asking is $30 million. You can't spend $30 million. That would put the Reds at about 130, 140 for payroll. Okay, Ann, think of all the extra asses that will be in those seats every night. Think of all the extra eyeballs, all the extra ears that'll be tuning in to either watch the Reds or listen to the Reds on the Reds on Radio Network. Think of all the jerseys that are going to be. So Kyle Schwarber, like Joey Votto, was an MVP player, yes, but he wasn't a homegrown player. Like, and Kyle Schwarber obviously wasn't drafted and developed by the Reds, but he's a home guy. He's from the area. Did that connection, that Griffey connection, and it's funny because, like, I'm not going to put Kyle Schwarber in the Ken Griffey category, but guys, Kyle Schwarber is stupid good. Stupid good. And to get a stupid good player for $30 million a year, that's a bargain, and the Reds can't even afford the bargain. Man. So now as a guy that does a show on a Reds on Radio affiliate, I got to get on the phone with the Reds on Radio reps and try to pretend like, man, we can't wait to push Reds this year. I want to push them off a mountain. Oh yeah, just keep pushing this young core. Keep pushing. I'm not going to push that. I'm going to keep pushing the fact that this team has such a great core, but yet they don't want to do a damn thing about it. Hey, Reds on Radio affiliates, make sure you continue to talk about this homegrown rotation. I mean, yes, they do have Brady Singer, but I mean, they drafted and developed Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo and obviously Chase Burns and Rhett Lauder and yawn. I'm not going to push that. I'm not doing any of that because I don't think you guys need to. Like, that's the thing. You Reds fans aren't stupid. They don't. The Reds don't need to tell me to tell you, hey, that our rotation's pretty good. The Reds don't need to tell me to tell you that, man, that Ellie guy, he's pretty special, huh? The Reds don't need to tell me to tell you that, hey, how about Terry Francona? Can you believe he's here in Cincinnati? I think that my Reds on Radio rep needs to, when he tells me this, I'm going to say, no, don't tell me that, sir, respectfully. I need you to go look back at ownership, and he won't because he doesn't want to get fired, and I don't blame him. But what I want to tell him is, you look at ownership and say, hey, ownership, how about the young core? How about Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Chase Burns, Rhett Lauder, Andrew Abbott? Hey, how about these guys? Maybe hype them up a little by, I don't know, giving them some help. Hey, Reds ownership, how about this Ellie De La Cruz cat, huh? Pretty damn good. Only have a few years left with him, you cheap SOBs. So maybe spend some money and give him some help. We're not asking you to extend them. We're pretty realistic. We know that you selfish bag of bones over there, that you're not going to spend a ton of money to give him a 10-year, $700 million deal. We're just asking that in the time that he is here, I don't know, try. Don't waste the next 3 years so that when you trade everyone away and do the prospect hoarding thing again, that we just have to sit back and wait for the next Ellie De La Cruz to disappoint us that he exits out of town because we're too cheap to keep him. Man, oh man. All right, you've heard me complain. You've heard me bitch moan and all that. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. 937-518-1410. I mean, is there anything that the Reds can do this offseason to make it up to you? Am I being too negative? I don't think I am. But 937-518-1410. I want to hear from you. Step away for a few moments. We'll take your calls when we come back. We're also live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. I see a lot of comments coming in the chat. I'll read those when I come back as well. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. The Reds miss out. They strike out. They don't get Kyle Schwarber. They couldn't afford him for $30 million a year for 5 years. $150 million, 5-year contract. Kyle Schwarber stays in Philly. We'll be right back.
The Reds spend money the way Kinner eats salads, rarely and reluctantly. The Justin Kinner Show, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
At Target, great memories start with great prices.
programming.
1410 ESPN Radio, because talking about sports is cheaper than therapy.
The Philadelphia Phillies, they retained the services of Kyle Shwarber, a 5-year, $150 million contract that averages out to 30 a year. So this came out a little bit ago. Ken Rosenthal put out a piece, just a summary of the recruitment of Kyle Shwarber and what went into it. So apparently the Reds, according to Ken Rosenthal, the Reds' offer was laid out for Kyle Shwarber last week. Nick Kroll, the Castellinis, and Terry Francona met with Kyle Shwarber before Thanksgiving. They sent him the offer last week. The offer was 5 years, $125 million. Now, if you remember, the Pirates approached Kyle Shwarber. Pirates are kind of they're not in the because they have a generational pitcher in Paul Skeens that they're going to lose. And Skeens, but the Pirates are like, well, we're going to have Skeens for the next couple of years. But I think Skeens representatives have gone to them and said, you either need to start putting talent around us now or we're going to demand a trade to get out of here, which I respect. I wish more baseball players put the pressure on their front offices. Some just like to do TikTok dances, as we've talked about in the past. Good for Paul Skeens for giving a damn. So the Pirates offered Kyle Shwarber a 4-year, $25 million, 4-year, $100 million deal. So that would have been $25 a year for 4. So the Reds came in with a similar offer, but they added an extra year, 5 years, $125 million, 25 a year, according to Ken Rosenthal, again, with The Athletic. And there was probably going to be with a lot of deferrals in there. And I'm fine. As far as the Reds go, I don't care how they get it done, just get it done. But man, according to ESPN's Jeff Passan, I guess Philly made a late push to get it over the line. $30 million isn't close in the realm of that market, of course. My problem is you lost Kyle Shwarber. Like, think about it. Think about when we get to opening day. Think about when we get into September and the Reds are battling it out for a wild card spot because this team's not good enough constructed as is to win the division. So with that being said, imagine when we get to that point and we're talking about, this team in regards to, what they're missing. They're going to be flawed. They're going to be without, they're going to need offensive help. Last year, from a total runs perspective, okay? All right, from a total runs perspective, runs scored, the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Brewers were the only 3 teams that scored over 800 runs. The Cincinnati Reds scored 716 runs last year. Now, you got to think, their leading RBI guy was Elly De La Cruz with 80. Kyle Shwarber had 130. 50 more RBIs, 50 more runs to be scored for the Reds, okay, would have put them in the top 10. They would have been up there with the Cubs, the Brewers. They would have been right up there with the Phillies. They would have been right up there with the Mets. They would have been right up there with all the playoff teams. Now, you could talk about the Mets who missed the playoffs. The Mets missed the playoffs because they didn't have pitching. Imagine the Reds pitching with 766 runs scored on the season. What I don't want to have happen is the Reds are fighting for their playoff lives, and we're talking about the deficiencies that they're having offensively. And imagine missing the playoffs or not having enough punch in the playoffs because of $5 million. Now, I'm poor. $5 million is a lot to me. But we're talking about it from the context of Major League Baseball ownership. The Castellini said being a playoff team is not worth $5 million more a year. That's the frustration. That's the frustration I have with all this. It's not okay. It's messed up. Is anyone surprised by that? The fact that I think 5 years, the fact that they were willing to marry Kyle Shwarber for 5 years for $25 million. It's like you spent that much. Why not just spend a little more to secure it? That's the problem I have. Good for Kyle Shwarber. Happy for him. It's his last chance to get the bag, and he got it. But man, Phillies, you got a home run leader. It wouldn't have been just the Reds home run. No one hit more home runs than Kyle Shwarber last year for 30 mil. You were willing to spend 25 a year, but not 30 a year. You haggled and lost him over 5 mil a year. And think about that, not just this year, but follow the Reds this year and the next 4. Watch how many times we talk about, man, this team, they're missing a little pop offensively. And they're going to be without that pop offensively all over $5 million, because once you offered him the 25, you've already committed that money to him. So now it's the difference of what he got versus what you offered, in that $5 million range is the difference between where the Reds want to be and where the Reds are going to end up. And that's the problem I have with how this all shook out at the end of the day. Now, maybe the Reds brass that somehow came up with 25 mil a year over the next 5 years, wouldn't it be nice if the Reds took that 25 mil a year that they were willing to commit to Kyle Shwarber and commit that into 2-3 other players to come in and make an impact? Maybe they go that direction, but we know that's not the case. So we know that the Reds are willing to commit 25. I mean, 25 is their sweet spot. If you think Nick Martinez last year, heaven forbid they go $1 million over, and they gave Joey Votto a 10-year, $225 million contract back in 2012. If you guys remember, I mean, one of my favorite stories about that, the Reds at the time actually had put that together to go after Albert Pujols. The Reds' original plan was to go get Albert Pujols at first base. They were going to move on from Votto. When Albert Pujols ultimately went to the Angels for the $250 million, I believe it was, the Reds said, you know what? We're not going to swim in those waters. Hey, Joey, do you want this? And Joey Votto was a Red, won an MVP. It was a part of a lot of failures for the Reds as an organization for the next 10 years. Nick Martinez last year, right? We were surprised that they picked up his player option. That they extended the offer. I'm sorry, and he accepted it, and they paid him $25 million a year last year. They won't go a hair above $25 million. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of wild. But ultimately, they lost him over $5 million a year. The Phillies got him for $5 more million a year than what the Reds are willing to offer. And I guess we could sit back and wait and see what the Reds do. The $25 million a year that they put in the middle of the table for Schwarber, do they use that $25 million a year to go piecemeal other holes on this roster with that same intent? Or do they just, all right, hey, you get your money back, and all the owners, all the owners chipped in something. So now everyone's going to grab their money back. Are they going to use that money to go still fill holes on this, or was that money specifically and only designated for the services of Kyle Shwarber? Who knows? I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, 937-518-1410. I said this a little bit ago. I keep seeing people bring up the salary cap again, and I saw that was a popular reaction today on social media. Salary cap, salary cap, salary cap. I don't think you guys understand. The salary cap would not have increased the Reds' chances of getting Kyle Shwarber today. In fact, it would have been the exact same result. I gave this example earlier, if the salary cap is, and I'm coming in low, let's say that the salary cap is $200 million. You can't spend more than $200 million. The Reds are laughing, saying, well, we've never come close to spending that, so we never have to worry about overspending because we're not even going to come close to spending at the median range anyways. So a salary cap doesn't help us Reds fans. What would help us Reds fans is a salary floor. If the Reds were told you have to spend this X amount of dollars per year, that would help us as Reds fans, because then they can't just sit on their hands and do nothing. Now, I saw that this came in. Scott Campbell says, yes, a cap won't fix it. A floor won't either, because how the Reds operate won't change. Scott, you're wrong. You're wrong. The floor would force the Reds. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to spend. If you put a floor in baseball, you have to spend X amount of dollars, or you will be fined X amount. And if the Reds are going to spend any money towards anything, it's not going to be towards fines. They're going to put it towards players. Scott says all a floor does is allow the Reds to hang out at the floor and never improve. You don't get it, do you? The floor would not be 115 mil. The floor would be 120 to 125 to 150. I would kill for a Reds roster that is equaling 125 to 150 mil. Like, I would kill for a Reds payroll that sits at 125 to 150. A salary cap doesn't do a dang thing for the Reds. They would laugh at they're like, the Castellanians are like, hey, you want to put a salary cap in? That's fine. We're not going to come close to that anyways. Oh, we're going to put a salary floor in. Whoa. Hold on. Because I promise you that salary floor is going to be an eye-opener to a lot of teams in baseball. Because no one wants to spend. The Guardians have finished in the bottom 5. They've been one of the bottom 5 spenders in baseball 5 of the last 6 years. And I've also made the argument for years that the Guardians are bad for baseball. And it's not, oh, you're just hating because you're a Reds fan. No, it's common sense. The Guardians, I'm actually complimenting the Guardians' ability to continue to throw out a competitor out there every year. The Reds or the Guardians, without spending, consistently put a competitor out on the field. And they're consistently in the bottom 5 in spending. I think that's horrific for baseball. Because what ends up happening is the cheap Reds then look at the Guardians and say, well, if they could put a competitor out there for 70, 80 mil a year, then what are we spending 115 for? We just need to draft better. We just need to develop better. And that's really what it comes down to. If the blueprint to being a competitor in baseball really was the Dodgers level, the Reds wouldn't spend at the Dodgers level, but the bottom line is you would have to spend money to be competitive. For instance, you look at the Bengals in the NFL, there is a salary cap, right? And NFL teams don't struggle. I mean, you would be dumb not to. And to be fair, a lot of teams technically don't spend all the way up to the salary cap. Now, they have a lot of those rollover clauses and this, that, and the other. But, like, you have to spend to be competitive in the NFL. The Bengals put all their money on offense. They have the best offense, one of the best offenses in the NFL. The Bengals don't put a dime into their defense, and they have the worst defense in the NFL. You get what you pay for or what you don't pay for, theoretically. If you have a salary floor in there, you would be forced to spend money, and the Reds would be like, well, we have to spend money anyways, so I guess let's go get Kyle Shwarber, is what it is. Very annoyed today. Baseball needs a salary floor. And I don't know what all that, I mean, last year, I was very surprised. Like, people do not like Rob Manfred, the commissioner for Major League Baseball. I think he's the best commissioner in sports, by the way. I think Rob Manfred's phenomenal. And so many of you guys hate him. But everything he has done has been not to appease the traditionalist of baseball. Every change that he has made or initiated has been to make the game more enjoyable for you. Hey, we're not watching games like we used to. Well, it's because they're 4 hours long. What do we got to do to speed these babies up? Hey, there's just so much dull and dead time in these games. What do we got to do to close the gaps between the action? Some of you don't like the runner on second and extras, but it does make extra innings. It gets those games done quicker, and you're invested right away. Man, both teams are not hitting for anything tonight, but man, you put a runner automatically in scoring position, everyone's sitting up in their seat. You may not like it. You don't have to like it. It still has your attention. That's the beauty part about that rule change. The rule change of, as a fan, the fact that I can't see Aaron Judge every year is absolutely insane. The fact that fans used to not be able to see Shohei Ohtani every single year is absolutely insane. Thanks to Rob Manfred, me as a Reds fan, and I know he's with the Dodgers now, but when he was with the Angels, we would never have a chance to see Shohei Ohtani, ever. But thanks to the rule of, hey, every team will face every team every year, I, as a Reds fan, now get to see Aaron Judge every year. The Yankees get to see Paul Skeens every year. The Yankees, because we always do this, I get to see the Yankees. I get to see this elite team and this elite team. It's a good thing for those bigger markets, too. The Yankees fans now get to see Elly De La Cruz every year. They get to see Paul Skeens every year. Those fans get to see those players. Every change that Rob Manfred has made has been for you and me. Rob Manfred's a hell of a commissioner. And last year, I was taken back by how many people applauded Bryce Harper for standing up to Rob Manfred in the clubhouse at the All-Star break and said, if you're here to talk about a salary cap, he told him to F off. And he told him to get the F out. I was amazed at how many of you actually were like, that's awesome. Good for him. Good for Bryce Harper. That's awesome. I'm like, that's not awesome at all. For one, that's disrespectful. Two, Rob Manfred is fighting to continue to change the game, to improve it for us. Too many commissioners care way too much about I think Adam Silver's the worst commissioner in sports because he doesn't care what makes the fans happy. He cares what makes the players happy, and he bows down to them, and it's made their sport way less popular over the years. He's empowered those players to the point to where they think that they run that league. I appreciate the fact that Rob Manfred went in that clubhouse knowing he's not popular with the players, got cussed out by Bryce Harper, and he doesn't care because all the numbers and the improvement in the game, it shows Rob Manfred's awesome for baseball. Way better for baseball than a Bryce Harper because no one cared about Bryce Harper for the longest time. Now baseball's popular again. Now baseball, everyone's in I'm a Rob Manfred guy. And I trust that Rob Manfred's going to find a way to fix this. He has to come up with a solution that is going to help Reds fans, but also not punish Dodger fans. And the best way to do that is a salary floor. The Dodgers, we're not going to, and this is what I've always laughed at. We're mad at the Dodgers for what? If our team could spend like the Dodgers, we'd be all for it. I want my team to spend like the Dodgers. What I don't want is my team to not spend like the Guardians. Rob Manfred's going to come up with a solution that's going to benefit Reds fans at one end of the spectrum and Dodgers fans at the other end of the spectrum. And guess what that fix is? A salary floor. Now, the Dodgers they will never have to worry about a salary floor because they're always going to be spending. Good for them. Them spending did not keep the Reds from getting Kyle Shwarber. The Reds' inability to spend kept them from getting Kyle Shwarber. And a salary floor forces them to go get a Kyle Shwarber. And you could say, well, the Castellinis, they can't do it. Then sell the team, Bob. Simple as that. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Can't believe the Reds lost out on Kyle Shwarber. We'll be right back.
The Cincinnati Bengals defense is just like Chick-fil-A, not available on Sundays. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.
When you think of the most
Dayton's ESPN Radio. Your family might not understand why you're still mad about a 2019 play call, but we do.
Hour number 2, I'm Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, 4 o'clock here in the Miami Valley. We are off and rolling. A lot of Reds talk today, not for the reasons I was hoping. I really thought they were going to get Kyle Shwarber. I really do. I thought that the Reds were going to find a way to get it done. I just didn't think that they would engage in these talks without knowing that they were going to have to spend a dime, and they thought they were actually only going to have to spend a dime, but is what it is. I was talking earlier about the salary cap versus the floor. Scott Campbell disagrees about it. He's continuing to argue. I said a salary cap does nothing for the Reds. The floor forces teams to spend. Scott Campbell says all a $150 million floor would do would be the new $120 million payroll they have been running for years now. Scott, I don't give a damn. You do realize 150 more than 120, right? If they would only spend the bare minimum moving forward, that's great, but it's still more than what they're spending now. And it would make baseball way better. Look how good the Guardians are without spending money. Imagine how good the Guardians would be if they did spend money. And if the Castellini and that ownership group can't afford it, oh well. Get it to somebody else. Get it to somebody else. The floor is what's best for baseball, not the cap. I've always been amazed at how many people get mad at the Dodgers for caring. The Dodgers are trying to improve. The Dodgers have won multiple World Series. They have the best players in the world on their roster, and yet they just added Edwin Diaz today. They just keep adding talent. Why? Because they're competitive. They want to stay at the top of the mountain, and they want to keep winning championships. And we need a salary cap to punish them. Why? So that the Dodgers don't get all of those good players, then those players kind of float around in free agency, and it's still the same team spending money. And the Reds, you think that, because the salary cap would prevent the Dodgers from hoarding all that talent, a Mookie Betts and a Freddie Freeman and a Shohei Ohtani and now a Diaz, you think, well, they couldn't have all of those, and that would help the Reds how? Because the Reds would then swoop in and offer what? Nothing. All right, well, then the Mets get them, or the Yankees get them, or the Padres get them. Baseball doesn't change. It just changes the Dodgers a bit, but it doesn't change. Nonetheless, 937-518-1410. Let's go to who we got. Let's go to Rob. Rob, thanks for holding, man. How are you?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'm sharing in your frustration as a Reds fan. Just seeing if you're open for a little bit of discussion on maybe a combination of a floor and a cap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I definitely agree on a floor. I think my only fear on a floor is that the Castellinis may sell. I would worry that there's another Reds investor who would be willing to put the money forth to get them to a point where they could be spending 150 or 200 million. That would be my only concern.
Wait, real quick,
on the floor.
repeat. So you would be concerned that the Castellinis would sell? I feel like there'd be a parade if the Castellinis
No. I think they definitely would sell. I think I would be concerned that somebody else would be willing to step up and put the money forth to actually
and run it as
meet
is.
the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we sometimes assume that in the Cincinnati market, there's a bunch of people who have that kind of money and resources to spend. But I think the biggest issue is just how do we close the difference? What is it? 350. I think Dodgers spent $350 million on their payroll, and the Reds spent $120. That it's the 3 times it's spending. Whether that's a combination of a floor and then maybe a soft cap with some luxury taxes and things like that. There's too much disparity between somebody spending 3 times as much. But I definitely agree with you. I think there's got to be a way to not penalize the Dodgers, but also force teams to spend more.
And you know what? And yes, by the way, I agree with you 100%. I was just arguing one versus the other, but I think that the healthiest route to go would be a combination of both. You should have teams all being hungry and wanting to spend. And what you should never have is the Pirates. What you should never have is teams like the Guardians, who they just sit on their hands. They refuse to spend money. That's why I was so mad when Ramirez gave the Guardians a discount. I'm like, of all the teams to get a discount, it's the team that doesn't try. To the Reds' credit, the Reds spend up to their limit. I just hate their limit. The Guardians don't spend up to their limit, and those are the teams I can't stand, like the Pirates and others. those teams kill baseball. Everyone acts like the Dodgers hurt baseball. I think that the Guardians and the Pirates hurt baseball way more. So you're right. That
For sure.
combination would be a nice little way to meet in the middle there. Yeah.
Yeah, and those people who only want to do a cap, I would just tell them to be careful, because there's a cap in the NFL, and the Bengals find a way to still spend under the cap. So a cap alone doesn't guarantee spending, and maybe that's the curse of kind of being in a smaller market for sports, is you don't have owners who have their own network or have flush with cash and sponsorships where they could spend. And I hate to say it, but it might be the reality of being a Cincinnati sports fan.
Oh, it is. And you're right. I know that the NFL, with the way that they have some, the incentivization of, okay, you get the rollover money. So if the cap's at 240 and you're spending 220, you get to take that 200, you get to take that 20 million and roll it over into next year's salary cap, and it doesn't count towards it. So you would theoretically then have 260. But the problem is, why do you want a bigger salary cap the next year when you don't even spend the full allotment this year? So that's always the fun part about that. Either way,
I think the Brown family keeps that cap money because it's their only business.
Yeah,
I think they're the only NFL company that, so anytime they don't spend under the cap, that's salary, and that's their profit. So it's a challenge for sure. But I'd love to see the Reds spend a little more. I think that the smaller market teams have to rely upon good farm systems and not being able to buy. But now that you have that development in the farm, this is the window, these 2-3 years where you want to go for it. And to me, you got a small window in those markets. You got to pay the money. You got to put $30 million a year and say, let's go for it in these 2 years, and then we rebuild. But disappointing that they're not doing that with the young talent they have.
Let me ask you, I got someone called and yelled at me during the break because they said I was being too negative about this. We don't have to be happy that we didn't get Kyle Shwarber, but her name was Janice. She called in, and shout out to Janice. She said she couldn't come on because she was on a smoke break, and she was calling to yell at me. But I kind of see where she's coming from. Rob, I'm curious your thoughts on this. She said, well, yes, we should be angry that they didn't get Kyle, or it's okay to be angry we didn't get Kyle Shwarber, but like, she feels good that the Reds, when presented with an opportunity to get an impact player like this, took the time to come up with the contract. Am I being too negative? Are we being too negative? Does this make you feel good at all that the Reds really were willing to veer away from their original plan and to spend more money than they had intended to?
No, because I feel like I've heard this before. I'm waiting for the press conference where they'll say we were really close and the numbers didn't work out. I guess I feel like the formula and the recipe for small market is you really invest heavily in your farm system, and when those guys get to the point where you have that window where they're, in essence being underpaid or affordable to you, that's when you have to go and spend it. You don't have to, maybe they can't spend 170 million every year, but maybe there's 2 years you spend 170, and then I hate to say it, but then you got things and you start over. Like, worked for the Astros. It's worked before. It's worked for the Royals. Like, there's the way to do it. And I guess I get frustrated that they have all this young talent. They're right on the cusp. They obviously need some big sticks. They have everything else, and it's going to be we couldn't afford it. Well, if you can't afford it now when you have the young talent, you're never going to afford it. And we're going to play 500 baseball for a few years, and then our big market, our young guys are going to go off to big markets, and they'll struggle and have to rebuild and start over. You got a small window, and to me, you got to go for it.
Yeah, this is just simply the life. It's like being a mid-major basketball fan. You're never going to recruit at the level of Duke or the big schools. But you just got to hope that maybe you catch fire and go on a run in March. And that's what the Reds feel like. Hey, we're never going to see them get the big recruits like Duke and Kentucky and others. And we just got to hope that they get hot at the right time and go on a little Cinderella run. And it's the Reds are a mid-major basketball team, and they're a mid-major basketball program. That's the only thing I can compare them to, because they're just stuck in their own ways. It's frustrating. It's
a good comparison. There's a lot of perks for being able to be in a smaller market town. Ticket prices are affordable, and there's a lot of things that are beneficial. The biggest problem is the fact that they're never going to spend the money, and they don't have the money to spend. And so it makes it really challenging to be competitive. And I'm with you. I don't see how the Castellinis, with all the other business things they have, don't take a shot for a few years and bring that winner there and then rebuild. But they're not. And unfortunately, the life of a Reds fan right now.
Always fun. But hey,
yeah,
whatever. But hey, Rob, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for calling.
Yep. Take care.
937-518-1410. Let's go to AJ. AJ, you're on live, sir. Welcome.
Hey, Justin. What's up, man? You mentioned it, I think it was last week or maybe a couple weeks ago, that this was just you were scared or nervous that this was almost a smokescreen or a ploy to be like, oh, well, we tried, we didn't get them.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like that was the intention from the beginning. Like, to be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that you're disappointed that we didn't get him, because that means that you did have the hope that we were going to get him.
Yes, I admit,
I never had any
AJ,
hope from the beginning.
That's the spirit. I admitted earlier that I hit a show last week where I'm like, okay, come on, everyone, don't be dumb. They're not going to get this done. But then I started falling for a lot of the Jeff Passan tweets and the Ken Rosenthal tweets. And, it wasn't just the national media. It was a lot of local media in Philadelphia that was coming out and saying, hey, that the Phillies are going to offer more than anyone else, but the Reds are the legit favorites to get this. So when I started hearing a little bit of those things, I started buying back in, and ultimately they lost him over $5 million a year. But you're saying at no point were you confident that this was going to happen?
What I heard, I think I had heard it from a couple places, but there was something that you highlighted where Kyle Shwarber was considering a hometown discount.
Yeah, and that was a report that had come out from Ken Rosenthal.
People don't discounts anymore.
And
those are talking points, but these guys are going to maximize their money as much as they can. And if there was some true consideration from Schwarber for the Reds, I think it was really just leverage against the Phillies.
And to be honest, good for Kyle Shwarber. He hit a home run, and he hits a lot of those then, because you're right. No, the other comparison I made it to was I didn't want to be drug along by the Reds to make us feel like they were truly serious about this. I had made the comparison. We had Ron Harper come in not too long ago, and he sat down on the show with Byers and I, and he had shared the story about why he couldn't stand Don Donaher in Dayton. He respects Don Donaher, but he just was so mad at them back in the day because it had come out in the Dayton Daily News that he was going to make his announcement that he was going to sign with Miami of Ohio the next day. Dayton wanted to win the PR wars, so they sent Donaher and the coaching staff to his house. They all sat down with them, and they made him a formal offer, just knowing that he was going to reject it. But that way, when it was announced the next day that he was going to Miami, that Dayton, in typical Dayton fashion, could come out and say, "Oh no, well, we tried. We tried to work out a deal with them." Dayton knew they were never going to get him. They didn't want him. So that was them saving face. And that's what I feel like the Reds did here. We're going to sit down with them before Thanksgiving. We're going to try to get a deal done, knowing that they had no intentions of actually getting a deal done. So who knows?
Yeah, I feel like it was all window dressing. And as long as the Castellinis are owning the Reds, there will never be any opportunity for the Reds to outbid for the top available free agent. Even if he is from Middletown.
So who knows? We'll see what ultimately happens. But I don't know. I highly doubt they take that $25 million that they were willing to offer him and spread it out elsewhere. Back to the poorhouse. That's where they're going.
Yeah.
So
same old.
AJ, you the man. Appreciate you.
Later, Justin. Bye.
937-518-1410. Shaw, what's up, my man? How are you?
Not bad. How about you, my man?
Another day in paradise. What's up?
Another day in paradise with the Reds and the Castellinis running the ship. I told you probably back in April, May, that it was going to be this off season or bust for me as a Reds fan, and we're not off to a good start. You asked earlier, was there anything the Reds could do to make this off season okay? What they can do is go take that $125 million and go invest in some bullpen help, some bats, and maybe a third baseman or a first baseman or some type of outfielder that is going to carry this roster over the threshold of not just being a fringe playoff team, but actually a serious contender in the playoffs next year. I've told you this once. I've told you it many times, and this is for most of the listeners out there. Caller Rob and I just completely disagree. I'm not asking the Reds to be the Yankees. I'm not asking the Reds to be the Red Sox. I'm not asking the Reds to be the Dodgers. I'm not asking the Reds to be top 10 in payroll. I'm just asking the Reds to be at or somewhere around the median payroll in Major League Baseball. That's all I'm asking.
Aren't they close? I think they're like 19th or 18th. I mean, they're right there. I mean, they're kind of in that
$45 million behind the median payroll. $45 million.
But
so again, they go out there and they sign the Schwarber contract. They're still $15 million behind the median payroll. This is the embarrassing part about it. Like you can't even sit there and say that we're in the middle of the pack in payroll. You can't even say that as a Reds fan. And then I'm tired of hearing about the small market BS. We're basically the same population size as St. Louis, give or take, depending on what metric you look. If St. Louis can go out there and pay money, then the Reds can go out there and pay money. If the Castellinis can't do it, then sell the team and get somebody in here that will do it. I hate to be the bearer of bad news to all you out there, but if the Reds went up to sale tomorrow, you better believe someone's going to come in and buy the oldest franchise in baseball. You better believe it. Don't sit here and act like, and don't listen to all this other stuff around the city and whatever. Oh, we're poor and blah blah blah. No, someone will come in and buy the oldest franchise in baseball, and they'll turn it around and they'll want to make it a winner again.
That's what happened with Cohen. That's what happened with Cohen and the Mets. You know, it was just, and that's what happened with. I mean, the Clippers they've always been an embarrassment in the NBA, and I'm not saying that they're not anymore, but, you know, Ballmer goes over there and he starts spending money left and right, and he gets them a new NBA arena, and they get Kawhi Leonard, and they, you know what I mean? Like They just went, you know, they went and got Paul George, and he just went crazy with the spending because he said, hey, I want to win. And it was he's a rich guy, and the team was his pawn, but he's having fun with it, and the fans loved it. And it's happening with the Mets. People buried the Mets last year. I'm like, I'm not going to bury the Mets. I love what the Mets did. They got an owner that came in and said, enough is enough. We're going to try to fix all of our problems with dollar signs. It doesn't always work, but I would much rather fail trying than fail not trying. When the Reds miss the playoffs this next year, it's not going to be because they failed trying. They didn't try. And that's going to be my biggest, my gripe when it's all said and done. Because I'm with you. If a Cohen buys the Reds, Cohen's not like, well, the way the market in Cincinnati's set up, I can't spend money there. No, it's his damn money. So I'm with you. I hate when people use market size as an excuse. It's not market size. It's your wallet size. You're the problem, not the market. Don't blame the market because, you know, yes, New York's a big market, but you know why every seat is full at a New York Yankees game? It's because there's good-ass players in the lineup and they're good. All right. You can't sit there and imagine in New York if they rolled the Reds lineup out there every day. They wouldn't have sold out Yankee Stadium every night because there's no one like that. You know what I mean? Like they're there because the team is good and the players are good. Put a good team out on the field consistently and not oh, by golly, we're so close. I mean, an actual good team. And it'll be full at Great American Ballpark 75 to 80% of the season, which is a lot, by the way. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot.
It is.
So,
it is.
There you go.
But look at it from the Yankees' point of view too. They miss on getting a big free agent by $25 million. The call-in radio shows are full of people absolutely losing their mind. Cincinnati loses a hometown free agent
by $25
million. Totally. And they're like no one. Everyone's like, well, it's just how it is. That's how it is here in Cincinnati, small market, and blah blah blah. No. So let's go by year. We lost him by $5 million. I wrote it in the chat earlier as I was driving home from work, and I'll say it here over the air. I was asked in August by a mutual friend of ours, what do you think it would take to get Schwarber here? I said it in August. I said between 140 to 175 million for over 4 or 5 years. I'm not that far off. What I would love to have known is if the Reds went to Kyle Shwarber and said, we'll offer you 5 for 140. What's he do?
I think he takes
What's he do? I think he takes it too because it's close to the 150 that he got from Philadelphia. I'm going back home where I really wanted to go if the reports are correct, and I have no reason to disbelieve every report that was saying he wants to come home.
He
So
said
I'm
it. It
gonna
wasn't just
believe that.
reports. He said it. There was the local news stations
Good
were
point.
in Middletown. He said it. And he wasn't saying I'll come here and play for peanuts, but he
Right.
said, if like basically saying I'm not going to do it for nothing, but the numbers have to be right. But also I think in the tone was acknowledging that I'm not going to get every dollar I deserve if I come here, but it needs to be within a respectable ballpark. And I'm sorry, but if the Reds and the Pirates are offering you the same amount of money, I know the Reds offered him one more year than what the Pirates would have. But Shaw, you said over 25 mil. My point was, look at it year by year. When the Reds missed the playoffs this year by 5 games, but 3 to 5 games,
100%.
I'm going to say that's every game. It's $1 million per game that you miss the playoffs by, because if you would have spent $5 million more this year, you get him. You get Kyle Shwarber. $5 million the next year. So yeah, it's $25 million total, but I look at it as by year. When they're just barely missing the playoff, imagine what a guy that hit 56 home runs and 130 RBIs could do. That's your 5 games right there. That's 10 games right there.
And watch this, and you know this as well as I do. Watch later on, coming near, we get very close to spring training. They're going to sign some nobody for $15 million.
Yep.
I don't know the name. I don't know the position. I don't know I don't know how old he is. I don't know, but we all know that come spring training, they will sign somebody or somebody's just to get bodies in there at Arizona. That's going to come out to about $10 to $15 million. And you sit there and you go, okay, we'll throw $3 to $5 million away on that guy, but we wouldn't get $3 to $5 million more for Kyle Shwarber a couple months ago. That's the stuff that drives me insane. Like, they sit there and they talk out of both sides of their mouth and they think they're actually being smart, and they're not. Because I keep going back to Mr. Castellini, the nice prophet who once said, well, where else are you going to go? It's just, I keep going back to that and the arrogance of that and just everything that surrounded it and why the fan base was mad to begin with. And yet here we are again, this many years later. And how many of us have been rope-a-doped back in to continue going to the ballpark, continue every offseason talking about, maybe this is the year, and then we come to spring training just frustrated because they didn't do anything again, and then come July and August, hey, maybe they're only a game out, maybe they're only a game and a half out, and then, well, they throw you a bone like last year, and they go get swept by the Dodgers, but hey, we were in, so we're right there, and you're going to go back out and you're going to spend $127 million in payroll again and be $45 to $50 million below the median payroll. And you really were never competitive, and you really were never giving it a shot, and you never really did give it. You never really did try. And that's just, I'm tired of it. And if they don't go I'm telling you, man, it's going to come spring training and me and you going to be talking over these same airwaves. And I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm just a straight Braves fan. I don't even give a darn about Reds anymore. Like, I have this much passion as a Reds fan, and I'm also a Braves fan. Imagine if I just was a Reds fan. It's insane. But anyhow, I know it's probably up time to it, and I probably need to go, but go Blue.
Nah, damn it. I was trying to cut him off. He always says go Blue. I got to make sure that does. We got to ban that from the show. So close. Michigan fan Shaw right there. And a Reds fan and a Braves fan. There you go. So more bad news. So the Reds did miss out on Kyle Shwarber, but according to Ken Rosenthal with The Athletic, the Cincinnati Reds are not expected to pursue other expensive free agents this offseason. Ken Rosenthal says that, and hear me out on this, this is the stupid part, not Ken Rosenthal, but the thinking. The pursuit of Kyle Shwarber was due to the belief that he would drive ticket sales. What? Kyle Shwarber would definitely drive ticket sales. But you don't think that any big name free agent would drive ticket sales? What? It's painful being a Reds fan. It really is. It really is. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll be right back.
Today's show is brought to you by False Hope Energy Drink. One sip, and suddenly you believe this is the year the Bengals get an offensive line, maybe even a defense. Warning, may cause midseason meltdowns and offseason excuses. The Justin Kinner Show, powered by pure, unfiltered sarcasm. And, False Hope Energy Drink. forecast. 100% chance of overreactions, heated debates, and a slight drizzle of hope for Bengals fans. Sorry, guy with Burrow jersey. You're listening to the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
It's all right, Reds fans. At least you have the Bengals. No, you don't. No, you don't. It is funny how the two franchises do reflect and mirror one another. Like, it's actually pretty dang wild, actually, how much they mirror one another. You have the Bengals, who get a generational talent in Joe Burrow. The Reds get a generational talent in Ellie De La Cruz. All while having two generational pieces, you also get outstanding complementary pieces. I mean, you could even potentially put Jamar Chase, who's a horrible human being who spits on other humans just when he doesn't get his way. You could put him on that list as a generational talent. I don't know if there's anyone else on the Reds I would put generational. Hunter Green's pretty dang phenomenal. I think that, like, when you look at the pitchers that the Reds have, like, for instance, like Andrew Abbott, it's tough to find an Andrew Abbott. It's tough to find Nick Lodolo. I mean, Hunter Green, I mean, I guess we could have that debate. I mean, is Hunter Green a generational arm for the Reds? I mean, he was a megastar as a high school pitcher. The Reds draft him, and that was a big deal. The Reds drafting Hunter Green was a massive deal. He could have been as big of a star as a shortstop and a hitter as what he is as a pitcher, based on his profile coming up. But the point is, both teams have generational pieces, and yet both teams have ownership that just refuses to properly invest into building the team around them. You couldn't put the ultimate power hitter in today's baseball in your lineup with Ellie De La Cruz over $5 million. If you don't know and you're just joining us, the Reds offered 5-year, $125 contract to Kyle Shwarber, which was $25 a year. He ultimately signed a 5-year, $150 million deal with I almost said Dodgers, because that's usually where it ends up, but with the Phillies. And they got him for 30 a year. The Reds offered 25 a year. And it's just pathetic to me that you just let him go out the door over $5 million a year. The Pirates offered 4 years, $100 million. I'm sorry. They offered 4 years, $100 million as well, at 25 a year. The Reds just added an extra year. It did come out. Ken Rosenthal said that the Orioles matched the Phillies' offer. That the Orioles tried to go all out to get Kyle Shwarber, and that they offered the same deal that he got from the Phillies, but he ultimately went back to the team he was most comfortable with, the Phillies. I think he wanted to be a Red, but I'm saying it's $5 million that they lost him over, but I guess over the length of 5 years, I mean, turning down $25 million would be kind of silly. And you're going to be $25 million, you're going to get $30 million a year on a contender. Kind of hard to beat that. After Kyle Schwarber. And the good news is by the time he's 38, when this contract's done, the Reds should be able to afford Kyle Schwarber by the time he's 38. Can't wait to put those 12 home runs a year into that lineup in 5 years, with God knows whatever prospects have been called up by then in the trade for Ellie. That's the spirit. That's that negativity. Ann, how are you? Ann Anderson on Facebook says the Reds will never spend big dollars on free agents, no matter how much they make at the turnstiles. I will always be a Dragons fan. The Reds will always be near and dear, but my rooting interest right now is up north with the Indians. I grew up an Indians fan so far, but it's so far to travel. That's another organization. As bad as the Reds are with spending, the Guardians are way worse, Ann. Like, they refuse to spend money. They're always in the bottom 5 in spending, and it's frustrating. So, yeah, I'm with you. But, I'm not going to backtrack here. But I did have a caller, and Janice, I called in earlier, and she went off on me because she said, hey, you're being too negative on this. I think it's a good sign that when the Reds were presented with an opportunity to get a talent like that they were willing to put a contract offer together. And I said, well, I get that, but I would much rather the Reds have not put any offer together and not even tried to swim in those waters, knowing that they couldn't swim. I think the Reds, and tell me if I'm wrong, if it would have come out that the Reds never even pursued him, like let's say a month ago it comes out that the Reds were, if a report would have come out that the Reds weren't even going to pursue Kyle Schwarber, I would have been mad, you would have been mad, but we would have got over it. I feel like today is a big gut punch. I really do. I feel like the Reds, like the Kyle Schwarber never picked up a bat for the Reds, but doesn't it feel like the Reds lost him today? Doesn't it feel like the Reds lost Kyle Schwarber to the, I mean, they did in the bidding war, but because the Reds were so involved in the conversation, it feels like, we had the rug pulled out from underneath us. Some of you are standing down, you're standing your ground that you did not believe it at all. I believe they were in on it. I believe that, reports came out, Ken Rosenthal, Terry Francona is a straight shooter. Terry Francona, the Castellinis, front office reps, they all sat down with Kyle Schwarber and his wife at Great American Ballpark, and they hashed it out. They gave him a contract offer based on everything that they discussed. It was a competitive offer. This is a season. They gave $25 million last year to Nick Martinez, who they thought they were desperately going to need him in that rotation. They thought they were going to need Nick Martinez in that rotation. So I'm not making excuses for the Reds. But Janice brought up a point earlier about just that the fact that they were willing to put their resources together to find a way. And had Kyle Schwarber accepted the deal, that's why I really wanted that to get done, is because I really wanted to see what the narrative about the Castellinis would be. Because, guys, a few years ago, they went out and they got Nick Castellanos, they got Mike Moustakas, they got Sonny Gray, they got Trevor Bauer. They did all of that in a calendar year. Shogo Akiyama did not work out, but that was a big-time Japanese prospect that the Reds outbid a lot of other teams to go get. The Reds theoretically, I don't know if that would have been classified as all in, but that is a rotation that they had Luis Castillo, and they went out and got Sonny Gray and Trevor Bauer. It's not as if the Reds have never been willing to go after multiple big players. Like, you know what I mean? The Reds went after and got Sonny Gray, who was big time. They went out and got Trevor Bauer, who was big time. They got, Nick Castellanos, who was big time. He wasn't Kyle Schwarber level, but he was very, very damn good. They spent about $15 million a year on him. And I know I bring this up all the time. Mike Moustakas did not work out, but Mike Moustakas was one of the best free agents available that year, and the Reds got him. The Reds got Moustakas, they got Castellanos, they got Trevor Bauer, they got Sonny Gray. They went out and got Shogo Akiyama. As I mentioned, I know that didn't work out, but a lot of teams were positioning themselves. They envisioned Shogo Akiyama being one of the best leadoff hitters in baseball. The Reds were active that year. The Reds have proven to be active at times, and I feel like they got bit in the ass when they were active that year because COVID hit and they had nothing to show for it. But, man, I don't know. Who knows? So I said this earlier. So Shaw said when he was on the phone earlier, and then as we hung up, I read the report that Ken Rosenthal with The Athletic came out and said that the Reds are not expected to pursue any other expensive free agents this offseason. Here's why I'm going to hold off. I'm going to put a pot as we wrap up our Reds conversation, because I do want to get switch gears to the Bengals in a minute. Here's what I'll say. I'm pissed off they didn't get Kyle Schwarber. I think it was a massive mistake. You were willing to give him 25 and you lost him over $5 million more a year to the Phillies. I have a huge problem with that. Okay. I said if the Phillies would have came out and announced that they did a 3 or a 4 year, $40 million, $35 million deal, I'd be like, yeah, I get it. The Reds, to go up 10 to 15 more a year than what they wanted to spend, that's a tough ask. But 5, you lost him over $5 million a year. I have a problem with that. But the wording on this is that Ken Rosenthal said that the Reds are not expected to pursue any other expensive free agents this offseason. The Reds are not going to go after the likes of a Kyle Schwarber. But could this be an offseason like what we saw when the Reds in 2019 went after everybody, and it started at the deadline when they went to go get, of course, to pair up with Luis Castillo, Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer, Mike Moustakas, Nick Castellanos. They spent about 60, 70 mil between all those guys. I don't expect the Reds to go drop 60, 70 mil right now, but they did drop 20 mil, technically 10 mil for this upcoming season on Emilio Pagan to get, who was statistically a top 5 closer in baseball last year. So that didn't say the Reds are done spending. It just said that they're going to be done going after the expensive free agents. They're going to go plug holes. And not that the Reds did a decent job last year with those, but again, they need impact guys, and that's what they're not going to get. And let's not dismiss the possibility of the Reds moving on from one of these arms. You have Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott. All right. You have Chase Burns, right? You also have Rhett Lauder. You have why am I drawing a blank? The kid that they got last year for the Jonathan India trade. It doesn't matter. Brady Singer. You have 6 arms, and that's a good problem to have because one of those guys will get injured. But I could see them saying, hey, we have a lot of depth when it comes to our starting pitching. We can move on from one of these arms to go get a power bat. And maybe they finally do that. Who knows? I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll wrap up the show with a little Browns and Bengals talk when we come back. I wanted to get into some more Notre Dame stuff today, college football in general. Be thinking about this. We're going to get into this on tomorrow's show just because we ran out of time. But Notre Dame is acting like the biggest victim in the history of the college football playoff era. If you had to make a list of 5 teams, if you had to make a list of teams that got screwed over the most by the college football playoff committee, where would this Notre Dame team rank? Me and Kev talked about it earlier today. I would have a hard time putting that, like they are acting as if they just got royally screwed. I don't even think that they have been, I don't even think they would make the list of the top 5 most wronged teams by the college football playoff committee in its existence. Be thinking about those teams. Which teams would you put on that list of the teams that got screwed over by the college football playoff committee the most? Would this year's Notre Dame team crack that top 5? Be thinking about that. We'll be right back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
Yeah, of course Kinner relates to Shedeur Sanders. He hasn't taken any first-team reps either. The Justin Kinner Show, 14.
Carlisle or visit the Homestead Feed and Supply Facebook page. Tell them the Colonel sent you.
Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
The Notre Dame pity party continued today. How about that? I mean, I expect every team that felt they were close to making the playoff that missed it. I expect you to be upset. I would be actually more concerned if you weren't upset. But I do believe that there's a way to gracefully kind of go about coping and grieving throughout this process. And I think that Notre Dame is failing every PR test imaginable. You have their athletic director that is coming out and basically saying that, that he's going to have a stern talking to with the ACC. The Notre Dame athletic director and Pete Bakiva responds to the damage that he feels the ACC did in the college football playoff ranking. He says ACC games sell out roughly 23% of the time. When Notre Dame goes to an ACC site, it's 90% of the time. This delusional goofball is not wrong, but also it's a weird flex. You won't join a conference, but you're mocking the ACC. You guys don't sell out any games, but 90% of the games that we come to your stadium are sold out. Not wrong, but also he is so angry that the ACC did not back Notre Dame in the propaganda wars in the build-up to Selection Sunday. He's mad that they gave more preferential treatment to Miami, who, by the way, is an actual member of the ACC, and not the rich, spoiled brats that is Notre Dame. I'm here to tell you, I thought I couldn't like a program more than the cheating Michigan Wolverines. I will say go blue, and I would wear blue to the big house before I will ever support this crap-ass program in Notre Dame. Bunch of whiners, bunch of quitters, bunch of babies, bunch of sore losers. It's actually pretty pathetic. One thing I will say, isn't it weird that it's the athletic director that is out doing all of the bitching, moaning, and crying? I'm disappointed in Marcus Freeman. I think it's messed up that he allowed his team to quit and not play in a bowl game. But maybe it wasn't up to Marcus Freeman. Which then I would question, well, how much power does Marcus Freeman have and how much respect does he have by that university if that's the case, because football is king. But it is all the athletic director who is out running his mouth right now. Is there a chance that Marcus Freeman is leaving Notre Dame? Is there a chance that maybe he's going to take an NFL job? Is there a chance that that could be the case? Because why else would Marcus Freeman not say a word? Or maybe he knows that his athletic director is acting like a jackass and doesn't want to look like that as well. And the thing is, I get that Notre Dame is upset. But like when I think about the teams that have been wronged by the committee over the years, as going back to 2014 to now, when you think about every year there seems to be that one team that is the face of, oh my God, the committee screwed them over. I think if you put a list of 5 teams together that were wronged by the committee, I don't even think that Notre Dame, if you made a list of 5, cracks the top 10. Notre Dame was not done wrong. You played 2 good teams and you lost to both of them. Sure, you played a combination of Big Ten and SEC teams, but you cherry-picked the schedule and played the worst teams in those conferences. I will give credit for the USC win, but that's a okay win. That's a solid win, but that's not oh my God, they beat USC. Give them the 1 seed. How about give them the finger and tell them to have a nice offseason, see you next year, do better? I mean, it's ridiculous. If I was to put a list together, if you think back to the very first college football playoff ranking, or not ranking, but the very first college football playoff field, TCU finished the 2014 season, and this, by the way, this benefited Ohio State, who would go on to win the inaugural 4-team college football playoff. TCU finished that season 12-1. TCU, by the way, people are mad. Notre Dame was sitting there ranked 9th, and they're so pissed because they were ranked 9th and ultimately did not make the playoff. How about TCU? They entered the final weekend of that 2014 college football playoff season. They went into the final weekend ranked number 3. They won 55-3 over Iowa State. After winning by 52 points, the committee still dropped them from number 3 to number 6. They weren't even the first team out of the playoff that year. That, to me, is the team that got screwed the most in the college football playoff era. That same season, it wasn't just TCU out of the Big 12, it was Baylor. Now, if you remember, there was no Big 12 champion that year. Baylor beat TCU head-to-head. They finished with the same record as TCU, and their only loss was a close game early in the season on the road at West Virginia. The Big 12 did not name a champion that year, so the committee pressured them into getting a conference championship, and they ultimately kept the Big 12 out. The Big 12 did not get in. If head-to-head matters, I said TCU got screwed over, but Baylor gets screwed over as well. TCU should have been in. Both got boxed out because the conference didn't have a conference championship. But like I said, for everyone out there, well, how could Notre Dame be ranked here all, throughout the whole system, and then the last one they get bumped out? Imagine in a 4-team playoff being ranked number 3, you head into the final weekend and you blow out an opponent 55-3, exerting your dominance, and you drop from 3 to 6 in the final poll. Guys, Notre Dame has not been screwed over. That's the ultimate screw over right there is TCU. How about in 2023, Florida State? Now, I believe Florida State has a gripe. I disagreed with the temper tantrum that they threw afterwards, but Florida State in 2023 finished the season 13-0, and they won the ACC championship. They were an undefeated Power 5 champion. They beat LSU and Florida in the non-con. They actually, in what was a great storyline, was ultimately a weakness because they would go on to win the ACC title with a third-string quarterback after Jordan Travis had that horrific injury. The committee basically said, your quarterback is hurt, so we assume you won't compete with the top 4 teams, which is something that they have never done before. And, of course, it was the final year of the 4-team playoff era. You can make an argument that Florida State was the number 1 most screwed team ever. Not even close. If you look at Notre Dame, they don't come close to making this list, guys. They just don't. How about 2016, the Penn State Nittany Lions? Because remember, the committee kept TCU and Baylor out because they were not conference champions. But how about just 2 years later, Penn State, they win at Ohio State. Penn State finished that season 11-2. They won the Big Ten championship. They beat Ohio State that season in their head-to-head. And guess what? Ohio State still got into the playoff instead of them, and they beat them and won their conference that year. Penn State had the resume that the committee has always said that they valued certain bullet points, and Penn State checked them all off. They were a conference champion. They had a head-to-head win over a team that they put in over them. They had multiple ranked wins, but they were punished for those losses early in the season. Yeah, brutal. I mean, you could even talk about Ohio State in 2018. They were a 1-loss Power 5 champion. Dwayne Haskins that season threw for 50 touchdowns. They didn't just beat, they demolished Michigan 62-39. They had a bad loss. It was at Purdue. But a 1-loss Big Ten champion throttled the competition. Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield got in that year. Listen, I can go on and on and on as we're wrapping up the show here today. But the bottom line is, Notre Dame, stop your crying. Please. I'm tired of the crying from Notre Dame. You played two good teams. You lost to both of those teams. You beat a bunch of bad teams. You don't play in a conference. You're not a conference champion. You didn't even lose in a conference championship game. You're just is what it is. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Happy Tuesday. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. We'll talk about all of this and more on tomorrow's show. Follow on Facebook, the Justin Kinner Show on Facebook. Go check that out. Let me know. Would you put Notre Dame in the top 5 of a list of the top 5 most screwed over teams in the college football playoff era? Because I wouldn't. Notre Dame, they were not screwed over. Heartbroken. They could be heartbroken. They could be upset, but they weren't screwed over. Give me a break. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Talk to you tomorrow, everyone.